I think the first time I realized I couldn't survive without Jean was the same day I almost walked out on her. I was halfway to the door, my backpack on my shoulder, keys in my hand, tears in my eyes. I remember staring at her slippers by the couch, those ridiculous pink ones with the bunny ears, and thinking, if I leave now, will she even stop me? Will she even care? That was 3 weeks after I told her I loved her. Not sisterly love. Not we survived the orphanage together love. No, the kind of love that keeps you awake at 2 a.m., imagining the taste of her lips, the sound of her laugh in your ear. When I told her, she didn't say no. But she didn't say yes either. She just froze. And in the days after, it felt like she was building walls around herself, brick by brick, shutting me out from a home we'd built together. I didn't know then that she was breaking inside just as much as I was. I didn't know she cried alone in her room every time she said something cold to me. I just thought, maybe she never felt the same way. And maybe I'd ruined everything. Jean and I met when we were 7. The orphanage wasn't the kind of place you grow up in. You just survive there, one day at a time. It smelled like bleach and boiled cabbage, and the walls were this sickly green color, like they'd been painted just to remind you there was nothing worth looking at. But Jean, she was the one thing worth looking at. She wasn't loud or wild like the other kids. She was quiet. Careful. Like she knew if she moved too fast, someone might take something from her. She had this habit of holding her sleeves over her hands when she was nervous. And me? I was the opposite. I was the kid who got in trouble for sneaking into the kitchen, for climbing the fence, for bad influence behavior. The first time I saw her crying in the corner of the yard, I sat down next to her and said, if you stick with me, you'll never cry alone again. I didn't know I was making a promise I'd spend my whole life keeping. We were 15 when we ran away. It wasn't dramatic, no screaming, no sirens. Just 2 girls with secondhand backpacks, $53 between us, and a bus ticket out of the city. We didn't have a plan. Just the kind of desperation that makes anywhere else feel safer than where you are. We ended up in a small town 3 hours away. Found a room above a laundromat. It was tiny, 1 bed, a cracked window, and a heater that made a sound like it was dying. But it was ours. And for the first time in our lives, no one could tell us when to eat, when to sleep, or who to talk to. We worked whatever jobs we could get. I stocked shelves at a corner store. Jean cleaned tables at a cafe. It wasn't glamorous, but every night we came home to each other. That was enough. Or at least, I thought it was. It started small. I'd catch myself looking at her too long. Wondering how her hair would feel between my fingers. Watching her smile and feeling that dizzy, breathless ache in my chest. For a while, I told myself it was just because we were close. Because she was my person. But then there was this one night. It was raining hard, the kind of rain that makes the whole world smell like wet pavement. We were curled up on the couch, sharing a blanket. She was reading, and I was just watching her. The way her lips moved when her eyes followed the page. The way her hand absently brushed her hair back. And it hit me so hard I almost said it right there, I'm in love with you. But I didn't. Not that night. I waited. And waiting turned into aching. And aching turned into something I couldn't hide anymore. I'd been carrying it around for months. This secret, this heavy, stupid, beautiful thing inside my chest. Every time I looked at Jean, it wanted to spill out. Every time she laughed, I had to bite my tongue. Every time her arm brushed mine, my body screamed at me to close the space between us. I picked the wrong night for it. Or maybe the perfect one. It was late. Past midnight. The rain was back. It always seemed to follow us in moments that mattered. The apartment was dim except for the warm yellow light over the kitchen sink. Jean was curled on the couch in her oversized hoodie, knees pulled up, eyes fixed on some old movie we'd seen a dozen times. I stood there in the doorway, holding my mug like it was the only thing keeping my hands from shaking. Jean. She glanced at me. Yeah. My throat tightened. Every version of this conversation I'd rehearsed in my head vanished. I crossed the room before I could stop myself, sitting down beside her. She looked at me, concerned now. What's wrong? And I just said it. I'm in love with you. It didn't come out soft or careful. It fell out of me like I'd been holding my breath for years. Her eyes widened. She froze, not the good kind of freeze, the kind where you catch your breath because you've been waiting for someone to say it back. No, this was the kind where your heart sinks because the silence stretches too long. Mikey, her voice cracked. She looked away, pulling the sleeves over her hands. She stopped. Started again. I don't. I mean, we've always been. I know, I cut in. We've always been like sisters. I know what it looks like, I know what it sounds like, but that's not all it's ever been for me. Not for a long time. She kept her eyes on the floor. My chest ached with every second she didn't look at me. I needed you to know, I said quietly. Even if it changes everything. Even if it ruins everything. Her hands tightened around her sleeves. Mikey. I need time. 2 words. That was all I got. Not no. Not yes. Just time. I nodded like it didn't feel like my ribs were breaking. Okay. We watched the rest of the movie in silence. And that's when it started, the distance. It happened slowly enough that, at first, I thought I was imagining it. She stopped sitting next to me on the couch. Started taking longer shifts at the cafe. Came home later, smelling like coffee and strangers' voices. When she was home, she'd stay in her room. Sometimes she'd pass me in the kitchen without saying more than a mumbled hey. It hurt in this dull, constant way, like a bruise you can't stop pressing just to see if it's still there. One night, I walked past her room and heard her laugh at something on her phone. A laugh I hadn't heard in weeks. I leaned against the wall and listened, wanting so badly to believe she still had that laugh for me. She didn't notice I was there. It started with a name. Daniel. I heard it for the first time one night when Jean came home later than usual. I was sitting on the couch, scrolling through my phone, pretending not to be waiting for her. She walked in, shaking the rain from her hair, and tossed her bag onto the chair. Sorry, I'm late. Daniel and I closed together, and she stopped mid-sentence, glancing at me like she just said something she shouldn't have. I forced a casual tone. Daniel? New guy at the cafe, she said quickly, moving toward her room. He's nice. Funny. Nice. Funny. Words people used for the kind of person you wanted to be around. After that night, Daniel's name started coming up more. Not a lot, not enough to accuse her of anything. But enough that I noticed. He brought her coffee on her breaks. Walked her halfway home sometimes. Once, he fixed the back door at the cafe, and she told me the story like it was the most impressive thing she'd ever seen. I wanted to hate him. But I didn't even know him. What I hated was the way she smiled when she said his name. We used to share everything: meals, stories, silence. Now, there were moments I didn't recognize her. One Saturday morning, I went to the cafe to see her. It wasn't unusual. I'd done it dozens of times before. The bell over the door chimed, and she looked up from behind the counter. But her face, it didn't light up the way it used to. "Hey," she said, polite, like I was just another customer. Daniel was there too, wiping down a table. Tall, easy smile, the kind of guy who seemed to belong anywhere. He glanced at me, then at her, and there was something unspoken in the way she avoided looking at me. I ordered a coffee I didn't want and sat in the corner. Watched them laugh together while she worked. Watched her touch his arm in a way she hadn't touched mine in weeks. The jealousy wasn't loud. It was quiet. The kind that seeps in slowly, drop by drop, until you're drowning and you don't even realize it. I told myself not to make it a big deal. I told myself she was allowed to have friends. But late at night, lying awake in our apartment, I'd hear her phone buzz. A message. A laugh under her breath. Sometimes, she'd get up and go to the kitchen, talking in that low voice you only use when you're trying not to wake someone. And every time, I'd wonder if she was talking to him. So I started pulling back too. Not because I wanted to, but because it hurt too much to be near her when she felt so far away. I stayed longer at the flower shop. Started walking home the long way, through streets I didn't know. I talked more to Emma, my coworker, just to fill the silence Jean left behind. Emma was sweet. Easy to be around. She didn't ask questions I didn't want to answer. She didn't make me feel like I was waiting for something that might never come. But she wasn't Jean. No one was Jean. It's strange how someone can hurt you without ever raising their voice. Jean didn't yell. She didn't slam doors. She just stopped being soft. It was in the little things. The way her good morning sounded more like a chore than a greeting. The way she'd answer my questions with one-word replies. The way she'd scroll through her phone at dinner, like I wasn't sitting across from her. And every time, I tell myself, she's tired. It's not about me. But deep down, I knew it was. One night, I asked if she wanted to watch something together. She didn't even look up. "I've got stuff to do." I tried to joke, to break the tension. "Since when do you have stuff to do? What is this, secret agent work?" She put her phone down and finally looked at me, but her eyes weren't warm. "Mikey, not everything's a joke." It shouldn't have hurt as much as it did. But it did. It always did. When you love someone, you start keeping a mental list of everything you might be doing wrong. I replayed every conversation in my head. Was I too pushy? Did I confess too soon? Did I make her feel trapped? Sometimes I'd catch myself apologizing for things I hadn't even done. "Sorry I asked. Sorry I bothered you. Sorry I exist in your space." One night, after a particularly quiet dinner, I went to my room and sat on the floor with my back against the door. I could hear her moving around in the kitchen. Every sound was a reminder that she was there, but not with me. I didn't cry loudly. I didn't want her to hear. But in the darkness, I pressed my hands to my mouth and let the tears fall because there was nowhere else for them to go. What I didn't know then, what I'd only find out much later, was that Jean hated herself for every cold word. She'd retreat to her room, curl up under the blanket, and cry into her sleeves. She wasn't trying to punish me. She was trying to kill something inside herself. That something was her feelings for me. She thought if she buried them deep enough, maybe we could go back to the way things were. Back before I said I loved her. Back before I made her look at me in a way she'd been trying not to for years. The cruelest part? I would have forgiven her for anything if she just told me the truth. The night I almost left wasn't loud. No screaming, no fight, no dramatic storm outside. Just the quiet kind of breaking, the kind you can't glue back together. I'd been sitting on the couch for over an hour, staring at the muted TV, my backpack on the floor beside me. It wasn't even packed. I didn't have anywhere to go. But the thought of staying another night in that apartment with her silence pressing against me felt impossible. Jean was in her room. Door closed. Music faint enough that I couldn't make out the words. I looked over at the wall between us and thought, we used to sit against that wall together, now it's the thing keeping us apart. I stood up. Slipped my keys into my pocket. My heart was pounding like I'd already decided. That's when I saw them, her slippers by the couch. The ridiculous pink ones with the bunny ears she'd worn since we were 17. Something in me cracked. If I walked out now, I didn't know if I'd ever see her wearing them again. My throat tightened. I picked up my bag, but my hand wouldn't turn the doorknob. I just stood there, feeling like I was holding my whole life in my hands, and it was slipping away. I didn't leave that night. But after that, I couldn't stay the same either. I started staying later at the flower shop. Emma, my coworker, became my person to talk to. She'd bring me tea on slow afternoons, listen without interrupting, make me laugh without trying too hard. I never flirted with her. I couldn't. She wasn't Jean. But she was safe in a way Jean wasn't anymore. One evening, Emma invited me out after work. Just a simple grab a bite kind of thing. I said yes, mostly because I didn't want to go home yet. We sat in a small diner, eating greasy fries and talking about everything except the thing that was killing me inside. But the whole time, I felt this ghost of Jean's presence, the way she'd wrinkle her nose at diner coffee, the way she'd steal my fries without asking. It didn't matter where I went or who I was with. She was everywhere. The change in me didn't go unnoticed. One night, I came home late to find Jean sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling through her phone. She looked up, her expression unreadable. Out with Emma? She asked. It wasn't a friendly question. It was the kind of question that made my chest tighten. Yeah, I said simply, hanging my jacket. She nodded, but her eyes lingered on me a second too long. You seem to be spending a lot of time with her lately. I wanted to say, and you've been spending a lot of time with Daniel. But I didn't. I just poured myself some water and took it to my room. That night, I lay in bed wondering if this was jealousy, or if she just didn't like the idea of me replacing her. Either way, the tension between us was shifting. And something told me it wouldn't be long before one of us broke. It happened on a Tuesday. Not a special day, not a holiday. Just a Tuesday where the air felt heavier than it should. I'd just gotten home from work, still in my coat, when Jean appeared from the hallway. She looked wrecked. Hair in a messy bun, hoodie sleeves pushed up, eyes red like she'd been crying. Mikey, can we talk? My instinct was to say I was tired, to put it off, because that's what she'd been doing to me for weeks. But something in her voice, low, unsteady, made me stay. Yeah, I said, setting my bag down. She just stood there, staring at me like I was both the answer and the problem. Then, without warning, she crossed the room and grabbed my hands. I can't do this anymore. My heart dropped. Do what? This, she gestured between us. Pretending I don't want you. Pretending I can keep you in that sister box I've been trying to shove you into. I can't. Her voice broke, and she squeezed my hands tighter. I've been so scared, Mikey. I thought if I admitted it, I'd ruin us. So I pushed you away, I acted cold, I made you think you weren't enough. But the truth is, you're too much. You've always been too much for me to handle. My chest felt like it was caving in. Then why? My voice cracked. Why did you make me feel like I was the only one fighting for this? She blinked hard, tears spilling over. Because I'm a coward. Because every time I looked at you, all I could think about was how much it would hurt if I lost you. So I decided to hurt you first. The words hit like a punch. And for a second, I hated her for them. She wrapped her arms around me, holding me so tight I could barely breathe. I love you, she whispered against my shoulder. God, Mikey, I've loved you since we were kids. I just didn't know it was this kind of love. I wanted to melt into her, to take this as the happy ending I'd been begging for. But my heart still ached. You think just saying it makes it better? My voice was sharp, but it was trembling. You think I haven't been lying awake wondering why I wasn't enough for you to choose sooner? Her arms loosened, and she pulled back to look at me. The pain in her eyes was almost worse than my own. I know I don't deserve you forgiving me. But please, her voice broke again, please let me try to make it right. I'll take care of your heart this time. I swear. I didn't answer right away. I just stood there, staring at her, feeling the war inside me. Because the truth was, I still loved her. And that was the problem. We didn't kiss that night. It wasn't some big, cinematic reunion where everything just fell into place. Instead, we sat on the couch with a blanket between us, our shoulders almost touching. Jean kept glancing at me like she was checking to see if I was still there. And I was. But part of me was also somewhere else. In all those weeks she'd shut me out. She made tea. Chamomile. My favorite. When she set the mug in front of me, our fingers brushed, and my chest tightened. I'm going to mess this up sometimes, she said quietly, sitting back down. Not because I don't love you, but because I'm still figuring out how to be this with you. I stared into my tea, steam curling up into my face. You don't get to figure it out at my expense anymore, Jean. If you need space, you say it. If you're scared, you tell me. No more disappearing behind a wall and expecting me to wait on the other side. Her eyes softened, but there was a shadow there, guilt, maybe. Okay, she whispered. We stayed like that for a while, sipping tea, letting the quiet stretch. It wasn't comfortable yet. But it wasn't suffocating either. The first week was cautious. We didn't call it dating. We didn't announce it to anyone. But Jean started leaving little notes in my bag again, things like have a good day and don't forget your lunch. One evening, she showed up at the flower shop just before closing. She stood outside the window, hands in her coat pockets, watching me sweep the floor. When I unlocked the door, she smiled like she was seeing me for the first time in years. "Wanna go for a walk?" she asked. It was cold, but she held my hand anyway. And every few minutes, she'd give it a squeeze, like she was making sure I was real. Chapter 20, Cracks in the Ice. But the past didn't disappear just because we were trying again. Sometimes, when she reached for me too quickly, I'd flinch without meaning to. Sometimes, I'd find myself pulling away first, afraid of being the one left in the cold again. One night, she noticed. We were lying on the couch, my head in her lap, her fingers in my hair. "You still don't trust me," she said softly. I didn't answer right away. Then, not completely. She nodded, her hands stilling for a second before moving again. That's fair. But I'm not going anywhere this time, Mikey. Not unless you tell me to. Something in her voice, quiet, certain, made me believe her. Or at least, made me want to. But the past didn't disappear just because we were trying again. Sometimes, when she reached for me too quickly, I'd flinch without meaning to. Sometimes, I'd find myself pulling away first, afraid of being the one left in the cold again. One night, she noticed. We were lying on the couch, my head in her lap, her fingers in my hair. You still don't trust me, she said softly. I didn't answer right away. Then, not completely. She nodded, her hands stilling for a second before moving again. That's fair. But I'm not going anywhere this time, Mikey. Not unless you tell me to. Something in her voice, quiet, certain, made me believe her. Or at least, made me want to. It was Jean's idea. Let's get out of here for a couple of days, she'd said one evening, while I was folding laundry. No work, no routines, no ghosts. I'd laughed at that. We can't exactly afford Paris, Jean. She grinned. Who said anything about Paris? I was thinking the city, just a train ride away. We'll stay somewhere cheap. I'll even pack the snacks. I wanted to say no. Part of me still worried that too much time alone with her would remind me of the cracks in us. But the way she looked at me, like she needed this, made it hard to refuse. The train ride was quiet, our knees touching the whole way. Jean kept pointing out things outside the window, an old barn, a frozen river, like we were kids again, escaping the orphanage and seeing the world for the first time. We checked into a small boutique hotel on the edge of downtown. It smelled faintly of coffee and wood polish. The lobby had soft jazz playing, and the girl at the front desk handed us 2 key cards with a polite smile. Our room was small, but the window overlooked the busy street below. People hurried past in coats and scarves, steam rising from manhole covers. It felt alive in a way our little town never did. That first night, Jean insisted on taking me to a rooftop cafe she'd read about. The view was ridiculous, the city lights glittered like spilled jewels, and a breeze carried the faint smell of roasted chestnuts from a vendor down the block. Jean sat across from me, chin in her hand, just watching me. What? I asked, smiling despite myself. She shrugged. Just you. Like this. Happy. The second day, it all fell apart. We'd spent the morning exploring side streets and thrift shops. I'd bought a scarf I didn't need. She'd found a used paperback with a handwritten note inside. Everything felt easy. Until we stopped for lunch. The cafe was crowded. While we waited for a table, Jean pulled out her phone. She was smiling at something, a message, probably. I leaned over, teasing, "Who's that?" She hesitated. Just for a second. But it was enough to send my stomach into freefall. It's nothing, she said, slipping her phone back into her pocket. Nothing. That was exactly the word she'd used in the weeks she'd been pushing me away. Something inside me cracked open. You're doing it again. She blinked. Doing what? That thing where you shut me out. Where you decide I don't get to know what's going on in your head. Her expression tightened, and for a moment, I thought she'd deny it. But then she sighed, shoulders slumping. It's not like that. It's just, she stopped herself. I'm scared again, Mikey. And I hate that I am. We ended up leaving without eating. Back at the hotel, she paced by the window while I sat on the edge of the bed, my chest aching. I keep thinking, she said finally, that I'm going to wake up and this us won't be real. That I'll lose you. And every time I get too close, that fear just swallows me. Her voice cracked on the last word. I stood, walked over, and took her hands. You don't get to run anymore, Jean. Not from me. Not from this. Her eyes filled, and she nodded. And then she leaned in, slowly, almost afraid, until our foreheads touched. We didn't talk for hours after that. The city outside kept moving, cars passing, people laughing somewhere down the street, but inside the hotel room, it was just the sound of our breathing and the hum of the heater. Jean was curled up in the chair by the window, knees tucked under her chin. I sat on the bed, pretending to read the paperback she'd found yesterday, but the words swam on the page. Finally, she spoke. I hate that I made you doubt me. Her voice was so small, it didn't sound like hers. I set the book aside. I hate that you made me doubt myself. That made her look up, really look at me. What do you mean? I spent weeks thinking there was something wrong with me. That maybe I pushed too hard, wanted too much. I kept asking myself what I did to make you shut me out. I swallowed hard. Turns out, it was just you being scared. But I was the one who paid for it. She closed her eyes, as if my words physically hurt her. Then she stood and crossed the room in 3 steps. When she stopped in front of me, I could see her hands trembling. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. And then, slowly, like she was asking permission, she reached up and touched my face. Every muscle in my body tensed. I dreamed of this, her hand in my hair, her thumb brushing my cheek, but now that it was here, my heart felt like it might tear itself apart. She leaned in. For a second, her lips hovered just above mine, and I could feel her breath. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. Then let me, I said. And I kissed her. It wasn't soft, not at first. It was years of unspoken feelings, weeks of hurt and doubt, days of wanting to close the gap but not daring to. It was messy and desperate and real. By the time we pulled back, both of us were breathless. Jean pressed her forehead to mine. You're it for me, Mikey. I just wish I'd been brave enough to say it sooner. I laughed, a shaky, tearful laugh. Yeah. Me too. The first thing I noticed when I woke was the light. Soft, pale gold spilling through the curtains, brushing over the rumpled sheets and the bare skin of Jean's shoulder beside me. The second thing I noticed was the quiet. Not awkward, just peaceful. Like the city outside had decided to slow down for us. She was still asleep, her hair a mess, one hand curled under her chin. I studied her face the way you do when you think no one's looking, tracing every freckle, every little scar only I knew the story behind. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was waiting for her to leave. We didn't rush to get up. When she finally stirred, she blinked at me sleepily and murmured, You're staring. Guilty, I said. She smiled, not the tight, guarded one I'd seen too often lately, but the soft, unarmored one I remembered from when we were kids sneaking out of the orphanage. We ended up at a tiny diner a block from the hotel. It smelled like coffee and bacon grease, the windows fogged from the cold. We slid into a booth by the window, Jean's knee bumping mine under the table. She poured cream into her coffee, stirring slowly. I keep thinking about last night, she said. My stomach did a slow flip. And I'm scared it won't be enough to make up for all the ways I've hurt you. I set down my mug. Jean, last night wasn't about making up for anything. It was about you finally letting yourself show up. She met my eyes, and for a second, I saw the same raw vulnerability from last night, the part of her that was terrified of losing me but just as terrified of keeping me. I need you to promise me something, I said. Anything. No more running. No more pushing me away because you think you're protecting me. I don't need protecting from you. I just need you. Her hand slid across the table and covered mine. Then you have me. All of me. From now on. The waitress brought our food, breaking the moment, but we kept our hands linked under the table. And as we ate, I realized something. We were still going to screw this up sometimes. We'd still fight, still misunderstand each other. But we were finally in it together. The city looked different on the way back. Maybe it was the way the winter sun hit the buildings, or maybe it was just me, lighter somehow, like something inside had finally unclenched. Jean and I didn't talk much during the drive. We didn't need to. Her hand rested on my thigh, warm and steady, and every now and then she'd glance over with that small, private smile that told me she was still thinking about last night. When we pulled up outside the apartment, the normal noise of our street, car doors slamming, neighbors arguing over parking, felt almost jarring after the quiet of the past 2 days. I was halfway up the steps when I heard my name. Mikey? I turned. It was Daniel. The same Daniel I'd been grabbing coffee with a few weeks ago, back when Jean had been all walls and sharp edges. He was standing on the sidewalk, hands shoved into his jacket pockets, looking relieved. I didn't think I'd catch you, he said. You've been MIA. I glanced at Jean. Her posture was stiff, her smile thin. Daniel looked between us, hesitating. Hey, I just wanted to check in. You seemed kinda off last time we talked. I remembered those afternoons, him listening while I vented, me pretending the ache in my chest wasn't about Jean. He'd been kind. Easy to be around. And I needed that. But now? The air felt different. I'm okay, I said. Really. Things worked out. His eyes flicked to Jean again, and that's when I saw it, the realization. He gave a small, almost knowing nod. Good. I'm glad. We went upstairs without another word, but the tension followed us inside. Jean tossed her bag on the couch and disappeared into the kitchen without taking off her coat. You okay? I asked. I'm fine, she said, too quickly. I stepped closer. Jean. She turned, eyes sharp. Were you ever going to tell me about him? I froze. There was nothing to tell. We were just talking. I was lonely and you. I what? Her voice cracked, anger bleeding into something more fragile. I shut you out. Yeah. I know. I hate that you had to find someone else to talk to because I couldn't get my shit together. But I can't stand the thought of you needing someone else like that. I crossed the room in 2 steps, cupping her face before she could pull away. I don't need him, I said. I need you. I always have. But when you push me away, I start to think maybe you don't want to be needed. Her breath hitched. I want to be. I just didn't know how. Then learn. With me. She nodded, eyes wet, and I kissed her, slower this time, the kind of kiss that didn't need proving, just reminding. And right then, in our small, messy apartment, I decided that if she was willing to keep fighting for us, then so was I. The days after Daniel were good. Not perfect. Jean wasn't suddenly transformed into some endlessly affectionate partner, but good. She'd reach for my hand while watching TV, She'd kiss my shoulder while passing behind me in the kitchen. She even left little post-it notes on the bathroom mirror. I'm trying. 3 words, shaky handwriting. But they meant something. One night, I came home late from work, cold, tired, starving. Jean was on the couch, scrolling through her phone. The apartment smelled faintly of takeout, but none of it was for me. Hey, I said, dropping my bag. Hey, she answered, not looking up. I waited for her to ask about my day. She didn't. I headed to the kitchen, pulling leftovers from the fridge, the silence following me like a shadow. You okay? I asked. Yeah. Just tired. The thing was, she wasn't just tired. I'd seen this before, the way she went quiet and cold, like she was bracing for something. I set the plate down harder than I meant to. You're doing it again. Her head jerked up. Doing what? Pulling away. Shutting me out without telling me why. I can't keep guessing what I did wrong every time you get scared. Her jaw tightened. I'm not scared. Bullshit, Jean. You're terrified. And instead of telling me, you hide in this ice shell and expect me to wait for you to thaw out. The words landed heavy between us. For a second, she looked like she might fire back. Instead, she set her phone down and rubbed her eyes. You're right, she said quietly. I hate how easily I fall back into this. I think about losing you and I panic, so I make you feel like you don't matter, because it's easier than admitting how much you do. My throat tightened. That's not love, Jean. That's sabotage. And I can't keep being the only one who fights to pull us back every time you run. Her voice cracked. I don't want you to be the only one anymore. And then she crossed the room, wrapped her arms around me so tight it almost hurt. Her breath was shaky against my neck. I'm sorry. I'll do better. I promise. It was a promise I wanted to believe. But even as I held her, I couldn't ignore the small voice in the back of my mind asking if she could keep it.